So, hello everyone, and welcome to Learn to Listen. Today we are joined by Cat. Hello, Cat. So happy to have you on. I'm going to ask you to do a little quick intro to yourself.
Hi, my name is Cat Salladin. I am a college swimmer at Rutgers. I'm studying social work. I'll be getting my MSW in May. I'm also a former member of the U.S. national team. I was on the national team from 2017 to 2018. And yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Wonderful. Love that. Okay, so I have a couple of questions and I just want to give background to like how we initially met because was it like 2 weeks ago that
Mhm.
we did the panel? Okay, so Athletes for Hope, they really are supporting athletes all over the globe with their own missions in terms of service and advocacy. And so Athletes for Hope had this panel, and Kat and you and I were both on it, and I was in person because luckily it just happened to be where I live, which is very nice. And
Yeah.
Kat, you were virtual. So this is the first time that we're like getting to actually, kind of meet face to face because we're both virtual at least. On the panel, I couldn't see your face. So it was like weird hearing you like talk. And
Yeah.
I was like, where do I look? Like I want to like look at the person, you know?
Mhm.
But just like their tech, they couldn't figure out how to like project the Zoom call on the wall. So they were like, we're just gonna run with it. Um, but yeah, I think it's so I have a couple of questions. Swimming, when did you start swimming?
So I was 6. I was really young. I always loved the water, and I tried like literally every single other sport known to man, and I hated every single one of them for a really dumb reason. um, like I quit soccer because I didn't like the grass touching me. I quit dance because I didn't like the tights. They're all like dumb reasons, but I always like loved swimming. So my mom was like, "Okay, you have to do a sport, so we're putting you in swimming."
Okay, well then there you go.
Yeah.
Um, that makes sense. I ask because I was also a swimmer before I was a rower. And so I swam from like 5 to 13. And so I was like, you know what? I have to ask because I feel like swimming is one of those things that you can get into pretty young,
Hmm.
right? Like it's not like rowing, you're not really getting into that. The earliest you can get into it is like 6th grade, just
Hmm.
because you like actually have to be able to like one be safe in a boat. Like if you flip over, like
Yeah.
you have to at least have enough strength to like get yourself, like out of the boat and like, out of harm's way.
Uh-huh.
And then your body just like actually has to fit in a boat because they don't make like kid size
Yeah.
rowing shells.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I started out swimming, and it was always because so I know you go to Rutgers, which is in New
Mhm.
Jersey. For anyone who doesn't know, I also grew up in New Jersey. So
Oh,
are
that's
you
cool.
from Jersey?
No, I'm actually from Southern California.
Oh my God. Okay, look at that. That's so funny. So I was gonna be like, okay, if you're also from Jersey,
Yeah, that would be
um,
crazy.
yeah, we're gonna talk about it. 'Cause I feel like, and maybe being from California, you would agree, like growing up near water, it was like all kids were learning how to swim, just like
Mhm.
from a safety standpoint, right? Like
Mhm.
whether you're at the beach or someone's house, there's a pool, you have to know how to swim so that you
Yeah.
obviously don't drown. But what's swimming like in California then? Because I know kind of what it's like in New Jersey on the East Coast.
It's really big in California. Like definitely coming to New Jersey, and I also went to the University of Alabama first, and
Okay.
so I kind of not as much saw the club scene there, but like I coach for a club here, and I kind of can see that it's a lot of YMCA's. It's a lot of like it's definitely not as big as in California. Like in California, swimming is huge. There we have like 3 different LSCs just for California because it's like we have like 15 different JO meets. We have like 3 different sectionals. Like it's crazy how huge swimming is in California.
Okay. Okay, cool. So was it, I don't know if this is the same terminology, but I was on like a competitive team, like it was year round. Was that what you were doing as well?
Yeah, yeah. I was on a club team. And pretty much everybody in California, if they're gonna swim, like if swimming is their sport, they're on a club team. I don't
Okay.
think there's really anybody who just would do high school. Maybe if they just did high school and like played another sport or something, but for the most part, they were on like a club.
Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, I would say that's so. in Jersey, we had like summer clubs from the beach clubs, which I don't know if you've like seen or heard of or anything, but they were just like beach clubs on the beach that people would like join for a summer. So it's like
Hmm.
every summer you were swimming, and then of course high school teams,
Yeah.
and then like club and competitive swim, which was like year round weekends,
Yeah.
competing and everything. And then I personally got burnt out on it, so I was like, oh,
Yeah.
need to
Yeah.
switch.
Yeah.
And that's when I picked up like more like ball sports with my friends, like
Mm.
soccer and basketball.
Yeah, that's one thing that I've noticed that's really different in California than from other states. Like I see a lot of people here and like in other states have like summer league, and
Mm,
they'll do like those fun summer league meets, and even older kids will do it like just for fun.
yeah.
And like we do not have that there. Like it's all pretty intense, honestly. Like if I mean, I guess like there is probably an option somewhere, but for the most part, the people that I knew who were growing up in like swimming and probably gonna swim in college, like if that's what they were planning on doing, it was like nobody did summer league. I don't even know if it's a thing. Like
Yeah.
everybody who I was around, like it was kind of the expectation that you were gonna swim in college. So
Mm.
like the clubs in California were pretty set up for like the expectation to go swim in college.
Okay, that's really interesting. So was because I know nowadays rowing is also, I'm trying to like draw parallels. Like when you were
Mhm.
growing up, was rowing as big in California as it is like
No,
now?
I didn't even know that rowing was a thing until I got to college.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I heard when I went to Alabama, I was like, "What's rowing? There's a rowing team here. I didn't even know that." And then I
Yeah.
met girls on the rowing team, and I was like, "Oh wow, this is cool." I did actually. That's not true. I did get emails from like um coaches, rowing coaches, like recruiting
Hmm.
swimmers, and I was like, "Huh, this is funny. I've never been in a boat in my life. I don't know how you would expect me to be good at this, but okay."
Yeah, I mean that's like pretty, so it's funny because like swimmers and gymnasts, swimming and gymnastics, they are both like a strong pipeline to rowing because
Really,
it's,
gymnastics.
yes, gymnastics, yeah, which is so crazy
That's shocking.
because I know, and it is so weird to hear about because you're like you think it's just so different, but gymnasts are very flexible, which you have to be for
Mhm.
rowing, and like their backs are extremely strong, and like they
Yeah,
just have such a compact muscular body that it
yeah.
translates really well. The thing is though, the play on height, that's like the only
Mhm.
thing that doesn't translate exactly. So usually if someone
Yeah.
has like a gymnast background, they're they're like in the bow of the boat, which just
Mm.
means like the bow, so in rowing you're like backwards, so
Mhm.
like your back is facing the finish line. So
Mhm.
the bow is the people who are first crossing the finish line. So it's like typically more for rowers who are like more dynamic
Mhm.
and shorter, they sit in bow. Um, so yeah, it's so interesting though. Like I have a bunch of teammates who were swimmers as
Mhm.
well. So that's
Yeah.
why I like to ask because I'm not surprised at all to hear that like rowing coaches were recruiting or trying to
Yeah.
recruit you. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's so funny. Wow. Okay. So how, when you were at Alabama, how long was that for?
I was there my whole freshman year, and then until the first week of November, I left of my sophomore year. I went home.
Okay. Okay. So home to California.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you walk us through like kind of the whole college journey? Because I feel like freshman year is like a whirlwind. And then so I'm
Yeah.
curious to hear what that transition was like going home
Yeah.
and then going to Rutgers.
I My college experience has been really atypical, I would say.
Mhm.
It has not been the normal experience at all. Going into it, like I, I'm gonna start like kind of in high school because I feel like that kind of like
Yeah. Yeah. Take us
a
back.
little
I
bit.
love it.
So my sophomore year of high school, I honestly like I was a good swimmer, but I wasn't like great. Like I had some D1 schools talking to me, but for the most part, I was really I kind of was set already on going to Cal Baptist University, and it's just in Riverside, California. It's close to my home, and I was like, okay, this would be a comfortable option. And like I was offered a really good scholarship there, like with the times that I had. And then my junior year of high school, all of a sudden out of nowhere, I got really fast and I became
Whoa.
one of the top distance recruits in the country. I made the national team in open water, and like all of a sudden all these schools wanted me, and it was crazy. And I was like really overwhelmed about it. And I definitely felt a lot of pressure to commit fast because
Mm.
like they were like, oh, well, this money isn't going to be here very long. Like, you're a distance swimmer. You're not like, we do want you, but you're not like as important, if that makes sense. Cause like I'm not a sprinter, so I'm not going to be on relays.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. College is weird for distance swimmers. It's definitely not like as conducive to like getting scholarships and stuff, just because you don't need as many people doing distance. And there's not
Okay.
as many events that you can do. Um, so I committed to Alabama, I think in August before my senior year, and I hadn't taken my official visit or anything. I just visited and nobody was there. I didn't meet the team or anything before I committed. And I also felt a lot of pressure from my club coach to commit fast because he wanted me to focus on training and trying to make the national team again.
Mm.
And so at the time, it was right after I went to Worlds. I swam the 25K at Worlds in 2017. So I made the national team in May at Open Water Nationals. It was the first Open Water Nationals I'd ever been to, first 10K I'd ever swam. And then I made Worlds and swam the 25K, which was like
Wow.
already a whirlwind. I
Oh.
literally never, it was insane. Like, honestly, literally going from like a no name to like on the national team was the craziest experience of my life.
Mm-hmm.
But I also got severely overtrained because my coach, he was very like into doing a lot of yardage. Like, instead I was doing like 5-hour practices. I was like,
Oh
it was
my God.
the amount of training I did for this event was insane. So my body afterwards, like, it held out through the race, and then I got in to swim the next day because I was going to go to junior nationals afterwards. And I got in, and my shoulder, my arm literally did not work. Like, my
Mm.
my arm did not pull a single amount of water. I was struggling in the practice, and I was like, this is so weird. Like, I don't know what's happening. I was so fast, like literally yesterday, and now all of a sudden my arm doesn't work. So I kind of, during that short period of time, like between the start of the fall season for my senior year of high school and the end of junior nationals, which I swam horribly at because I was severely overtrained and my shoulder
Mm-hmm.
wasn't working. It was like I did all of my quick college visits where I just went, didn't even meet the team, like met with the coaches, and then I committed really fast.
Mm.
And through the whole senior year, I kind of was just like, okay, it's fine. Like, I made my decision, whatever, like it'll be
Like
fine.
come to terms with it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That whole, and I had known that like I was supposed to go into Alabama as like one of their best recruits because I was on the national team and I had like really fast times for that age. And, but I was swimming horribly my senior year. Like I was gaining a minute in my mile, like, but it was because I was sick and my shoulder, I kept telling my coach, like, my shoulder's wrong, there's something wrong. And he would just have me swim more and wear bigger paddles and not listen
Mm.
to me. And that whole year, I definitely swam through things that I should not have swam through. I was forced to come to practice with 104-degree fever. I never missed practice. Like,
Oh my God.
it was really bad. My high school coach was I'm now only just now coming to terms with the things that he did to me and like how much he has like affected my body. Like, my body has never been the same since then
Mm-hmm.
because of what he did. But so then fast forward, I get to college and I'm still really struggling. My body is not healthy and my shoulder is still really messed up and nobody knows why. So I'm going into my freshman year basically like broken and
Right.
frustrated. And but the coaches at Alabama, like, they don't know that. They only see I mean, they saw my times from the previous year, but they were kind of like, oh, that's pretty normal for, not normal, but like, it's okay. Like, you'll come here and we'll fix you. Like, you're going to have
Mm-hmm.
new training and whatever. Everything's going to be fine. I swam a couple meets and my shoulder was just in excruciating pain all the time. Like, I would not be able to feel my arm. I couldn't make it through practices without like crying in pain because it was just really, really painful.
God.
And I kept on getting testing. They thought I had TOS, thoracic outlet syndrome, where your first rib like impinges and it cuts off all the blood circulation to your arm. And then they thought I had a rotator cuff injury or a labrum tear. So after they pulled me from the water, they pulled me after, I think, mid-season. So
Mm-hmm.
in November, I wasn't allowed to practice anymore, and they just started doing a ton of medical testing. I went and got a nerve conduction test,
Mm.
and because they were trying to see if I had TOS, and I was laying there, and they did the one arm, and then they're like, "Okay, we're gonna compare it to the other arm." The nurse does it, and then she's like, "This is weird. This is not normal." She walks out, and I could tell like she was stressed, and I was like, "This is really weird." They
Yeah,
come back
this
and
is
like,
scary.
okay, yeah, I was like, oh my god, I'm
What's going on?
myself. Yeah, like what do you mean it's weird? What do you mean it's not normal? Um, so she was like, both arms were abnormal, so we need to do your legs. And I was like, okay. So they do
Oh.
my legs, and they were like, okay, your legs are also abnormal. So they diagnosed me with polyneuropathy, and then they
Mm.
sent me in for a MRI of my brain. And after the MRI of my brain, they found like spots and stuff on it.
Mm.
Um, and so they told me that I could have MS. Um,
Wow.
and that was like really difficult to deal with. I mean, I was 19 years old. I was 2,000 miles away from home. Um, and nobody really like did anything to support me. Like, obviously, being when you're sidelined like that, you don't have, even if people try to support you, like, you don't have much because you're not
Mm-hmm.
contributing to the team. And so for the rest of that year, it was like medical test after medical test. Like, a few months later, I found out that it wasn't MS. I was just so severely overtrained that my body was literally just freaking out on itself. And all of I got like testing for my vitamins and nutrients and stuff, and every single thing was like really, really low. And then so I got on some supplements. I rested, and we just kept doing testing for my shoulder. And finally, they were like, okay, we don't know what's wrong with your shoulder, but clearly something is wrong. So we're just going to do surgery. And I was like, okay.
Oh,
So
whoa. Okay.
yeah. So finally, in May of 2019, almost 2 years after I heard it in my 25K, they did surgery, and they found that like my shoulder was so impinged that my arm was like 3 inches shorter than the other one. And
Oh
I had, yeah,
my
and I had
God.
like 3 bone spurs that were tearing my labrum. It was like the surgery wasn't super invasive, but like they were like, if you had kept going for like a few months longer, you would have completely torn like your labrum, and we
Oh
would have
God.
had a way more severe like surgery. And I was like, oh my god, like I was really like relieved that we caught it when we did, but at the same time I was like, why did nobody believe me the whole time when I kept saying my shoulder was hurting? And like, if I had kept going on it, like I just kept on being told to do by my club coach and kept being told to do at the beginning by the trainers and stuff, I was like, I would have been, probably my career would have been completely done. Like, there was no
Yeah.
probably coming back from that. So after the surgery, I went home to California for the summer to kind of like recover from the surgery and get back into swimming with my club coach. But I switched club teams. My sister had switched right when I left for Alabama. She went to La Mirada Armada. And it took me a really long time, a whole year of convincing for her to tell me, like, you should come back and train with this team. It's better. Like, he's not an
Mm.
abusive coach. Like, he actually cares about you. And I was like so convinced that the previous coach was the only thing that got me success, because I still couldn't recognize like what he did to me was wrong. And I like completely blamed myself for everything that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, when I was like, okay, you know what? Fine. I'll leave him. I'll go to this new team. I'll try it. And I was like, whoa, this is how a coach is supposed to treat a swimmer. Like,
Right. This is like a good coach. This is the
yeah. And
best one.
his name is Rick Shipard, and he is literally the best thing that's ever happened to my swimming career. Like, he's
Oh,
like a
wonderful.
second dad to me. Like, I talk to him all the time. Um, and I that summer was really hard for me because I was began not began I've had mental health issues since I was 12, but my depression got was quickly getting worse over the course of the year just because of all the medical testing and like being out of the water. And I was also struggling with an eating disorder, and it was just a lot. And I kind of didn't want to recognize that. I was like, no, it's fine. It's fine. My shoulder's fine now, so I can swim and everything will be fine. But I wasn't, and I hadn't dealt with anything that had happened to me over the course of the year. So I remember I was in Hawaii for a training trip, and because this club team, they're the best. They take you to Hawaii for a training trip.
So nice.
It was amazing. But I just remember being in Hawaii, and I hadn't swam, and I was 9 months out of the water, so I was really out of shape. And it was like the first time I was able to swim after my surgery. So it was a really, really hard training trip, and my body was broken. But at the same time, I was like, I remember being there and like, I'm in Hawaii. Why am I not happy? Like, why am I not enjoying this? I don't understand. Like, I've always wanted to go to Hawaii. I would just like lay in the hotel room and be like, I don't even want to do anything. Like looking back, I'm like, yeah, maybe that should have been a little bit of a red flag. Like,
for sure.
If you're in Hawaii and you're not like enjoying yourself, like, So, after that, we came back, and I found out, like, actually, I had found out right before I left to go home that we were getting a new coach at Alabama, and that the coach that I committed to was retiring. And that was a bit of a shock. And I felt immediate anxiety when I heard who it was. I honestly didn't know much about him, but I knew I had this like sense of foreboding, and my club coach knew who he was, and he was like, I don't know if it's going to be okay. Like,
damn.
It was mostly about the training style, but he also knew him as a person. And my club coach was kind of like, I don't know, like maybe you should start looking at transferring. But by that time it was really late. Like it was really not feasible to transfer into a new program by fall, just because of financial reasons. And like, I would have had
transfer portals, like messy.
Yeah. Like everything was already done by then. And so I went back. I actually swam pretty okay at the end of the summer, given the fact that I had been out for 10 months and had surgery. And I was like, oh, you know what? It'll be okay.
Right. You got that glimmer of hope.
I was like, wow. I've had a lot of those glimmers of hope over the past 5 years in my swimming career. But
that's good.
So I went back to Alabama, and I was really anxious about it, just because the phone calls I had with this coach over the summer, like I knew there were going to be cuts to the team. I knew there were going to be changes in the training, and I knew there was a whole different like level of stress and like pressure put on us because of the cuts, and because of this guy wanted to completely redo the program. Like he wanted out with the old, in with the new. And I was trying to make the most of it. I genuinely was like, okay, like maybe this new training will be fine. Maybe I can be okay. But
like rise to the challenge.
Yeah. Like I was like, okay, you know what? I'm tough. Like I know I can handle things. Like I've literally swum a 25K. What can't I handle? But I just remember like going in behind and going in knowing that I'd been hurt. And I mean, I hadn't even gone to conference. I hadn't gone a best time in years. And I was like, okay, this is going to be tough to like deal with. And every day from immediately, like the vibe of the team was like, who's going to get cut? Who's going to be cut? And like people were turning against other people. People were having meetings with the coaches, like out about things. And like the coaches would literally bring people into their office and sit them down and be like, what do you know about this person? Who do you think should be on the team, and who do you think should not be on the team?
Oh, God, I can't even listen to that.
It was literally traumatizing. And during this time, like I was just getting more and more depressed and just overwhelmed by the whole thing. Cause I mean, it wasn't swimming. Like obviously swimming itself has had a lot of impact on my mental health over the years, just because of what I've gone through. But like, it was literally the stress of knowing that my entire world could be upended at any point in time. And like knowing that the coach would come into practice every day and be like, all right, who's getting cut today? Like there was just that pressure to perform every single day. And I couldn't, because I wasn't sleeping. I would sleep like maybe 3 hours a night, and I was really, really struggling. And so the second week I got there, or maybe it was the third, I don't know. I asked the trainer like, "Hey, I really feel like I'm kind of struggling. Like, can I see someone and can I get some mental health support?" And he was like, yeah, I'll reach out to them and I'll let you know." A week goes by, I didn't hear anything, and I was like, "Okay, that's weird." So I reached out to him again, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm still working on it." Another week goes by, I hear nothing. And weeks go by, and I'm asking every single week, twice a week, like, I need help. And I'm getting more and more. I'm just, I'm going downhill, and I can tell that I'm going downhill. And by the time I get in to see someone, it's like way too little, way too late. And looking back on it, I know, like, obviously I don't want to assume anything, but at the same time, there was multiple things that I think were done to me to purposefully get me to quit and purposefully get me to transfer. Another girl who was like a contributor on the team asked to see someone and got in that day. And
Interesting.
yeah, and that's kind of the kind of thing that would happen, like purposefully undermining people's mental health. And I mean, he would call people fat and like just be totally, I mean, he was he was abusive. And for a really long time I was really scared to like say anything, and a lot of people tried. 30 people, literally like half the team, reported him, but then they would
Oh
ask
my
to have a
God.
meeting with you so they would know who you were. And everybody was so terrified of getting cut because our whole education is riding on this,
Yeah.
that we couldn't do anything. We were stuck. And
Yeah,
we,
it's a power dynamic. Like you
yeah,
can't,
exactly. We were
yeah.
powerless. We were powerless against this tyrant. And like, I mean, the things that he said to me and what the trainers did to me, I mean, I would tell them like, I haven't slept in 2 days. I'm not okay. And they just didn't care. Like they did not care.
Mm.
Um, and I, I've, I'd struggled with self-harm for many years, since I was like 16, and I'd gotten better. But I started relapsing in that, and everything was just really going really south really
Yeah.
fast.
Really
um
heavy.
yeah, it was a really bad situation. And there was just no support at all. The trainers who were supposed to be our advocates were just working for the coaches.
Yeah. I mean, they're athletically bound.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
the coaches are more powerful than the athletes, right? Like
Yeah.
they're employed by the school
Yeah.
um, to
Yeah,
have results. And so
exactly.
it's really sad, but I'm not surprised to hear
Oh
that.
yeah.
I think that's the worst of the worst. And I'm shocked. Did you not have a like direct line to sports psych or any clinical therapist? Like you had to go through the athletic
Hmm.
trainer? Oh
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think,
see, that's a flawed system right
yeah,
there.
oh, it was totally flawed. It was completely flawed. And just the fact, like looking back, and the fact that I was like, I had this fear all the time, constant fear, and I had to go to practice because if I didn't go to practice, I'd be cut. But I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't go to practice and perform because I was so severely depressed and I wasn't sleeping.
Yeah.
And um eventually, like, uh wait, side note, we can cut this, but like how, like, um in depth should I go here? Like,
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah. I mean, you can go in depth as you like. So whatever you're comfortable with and you want to share, like by
okay,
any means. There's nothing from my side.
okay, cool. um I'm fine talking about it now. If anything, it just brings awareness to a really broken system.
Mm-hmm.
Uh so eventually I got to the point where I was so miserable. Like I was suicidal, and I attempted, and I called the therapist that I had finally gotten in to see. And she was like, call your, like, she was like, are you safe? Like, I was okay. Like, I mean, I wasn't okay, but I was safe. By the time I called her.
Mm-hmm.
And she said to call the trainer. And well, before I hung up the phone, he basically said nothing. He was like,
This
okay,
is the
like,
trainer. I just
this
want
is the
to.
trainer.
Okay.
Yeah. He basically said nothing and was just kind of like, okay. Honestly, I don't really remember the exact words he said, but I remember at the end of the call, he was like, okay, I'll see you in the morning. And I was like,
Ugh.
see you in the morning. And
Yeah.
at that point, in that moment, I was like, I'm done. I'm
Yeah,
leaving
there's
here.
no tomorrow morning where I'm swimming. No,
Yeah,
like there's no
but
practice
I
tomorrow.
did. I
Oh
did. I
God.
had to go to practice because I was still
Terrified. Yeah, losing your
terrified,
scholarship. Yeah.
losing my scholarship, losing my sport, getting cut. Like, to me, looking back, getting cut would have been a blessing because it would have been
Mm,
like it was um
like the
like
pressure is
no
over.
choice but to leave. Yeah, the pressure would have been over. I mean, I know I would have kept swimming, but at the time, getting cut was like the worst possible thing that could ever happen. And there was just this, like, my mind was just on loop with this fear that they instilled in us, that if you miss practice or if you don't perform, you'll get cut, and we'll make your life miserable. Like, we will make your life miserable. But
Mm,
like when I got, as soon as I got to the point, like, I was like, okay, I thought that, like, this was the only way out. Like, that
that's
is
too deep. Yeah,
yeah.
that's
It
too
was
messed up
it was way too messed up. And the fact that they made me go to practice the next day, I was just like, this is so corrupt and so wrong.
and
And that's
ignorant too.
oh,
I
it's
mean, it's just
totally
yeah.
totally. And I like and now that's why I'm like very passionate about like student athlete mental health, and I want to go into this field because
Hmm.
like, there is no advocacy. Like, people like to say like, oh, athletes have everything, like athletes are given all this stuff, but we're just cogs in a wheel. We're just like pawns in a system. And it frustrates me to no end that like our health is not cared for, our mental health is not cared for. We are like manipulated into thinking that swimming or whatever sport you do is the only thing in your life that um matters, and that going to practice and performing is like more important than your health and your mental health.
Hmm.
Because even if you believe, like, now I believe that my mental health is more important, but because I know that, like, there will be consequences to having bad mental health, like, that is why there's a lot of times where I'm like, okay, I can't take a mental health day, I can't care, like,
Yeah.
there's nothing you can do,
Hmm.
um, because of the way that it's set up and because of
Yeah.
we have no advocacy.
Yeah. Well, I want to say I'm sorry for you just as an athlete, other like a student athlete, and just as a person that you've gone through all of this because it
Thank
is
you.
wildly ignorant of the people who were supposed to be leaders and mentors and coaches in so
Yeah.
many different ways for you to have been so also like the fact that you were advocating for yourself and saying like I need to see someone
Yeah.
is just an extra added level of ignorance whereas we've in the student athlete world in the athletic world in any world any community that you're in it is way tougher to look past someone and something when they're straight up telling you in the face that I need this, right? Like it's a little bit harder if someone's really good at masking it and
Yeah.
that's its own thing. But to
Mhm.
have someone who is like, I am aware of what I need and I am telling you because this is what I need,
Mhm.
then to just turn a blind eye, that's so sickening to hear. So I really thank you for sharing because I know it's important to talk through and have not hide in the shadows or debunk any stigma and really tell true stories where like, no, this is happening. Like,
Mhm.
so I thank you for sharing. And it is wild to me that, we at 2022, like we're still dealing with stuff like that. And I think we're getting
Yeah.
better, but there's still so much room to had. And I want to applaud you for also recognizing that now you're in a space where you can say mental health is more important than swimming. And I can totally, totally, totally empathize with you on that because you alluded to it like the manipulation of sport is more important than mental health. And I think that's where student athletes, like you're 19 to 20, 22 in college, and your awareness for your life is like if you have done this sport for so long that's your identity and so what you're saying it kind of like plays off of that where it's
Mhm.
like your worth and your value come from your sport,
Yeah.
or like say someone's like really 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 into academia, and it's like
Mhm.
the students too, same
Yeah.
thing, like
100%.
you are so tied to your studies, and then you
Mhm.
graduate college and it's gone, and you're there's no more, unless you go, to postgrad or whatever, but at some point school ends, right? Like you're no longer the student,
Mhm.
and you're no longer the athlete. Sometime it ends. Your body tells you when that's time, or maybe different situations do. But I think that's one thing that I know I try to tell like younger athletes, especially, the sooner you can separate that self-worth and identity, um, or sorry, that piece of your identity from yourself, um, and kind of recognize that your sport or your passion or your hobby is just one piece of you. I
Mhm.
think that's when that switch starts to happen, where you're like, oh, my mental health is going to be with me for life. Like
Yeah.
that is a core part of myself, and
Yeah.
not just a piece of my identity.
Mhm.
um that's where I know I kind of thrive in that realm now that I've done the work to make that switch. But I
Mhm.
completely relate to you. And I'll give like a little quick synopsis as to why. And that's because I was injured and very much going through it with my mental health. I know we
Mhm.
spoke about it on the panel. And so out of necessity, I was forced to make that change of recognizing when your identity is your athleticism is just a piece of your identity.
Mhm.
And so I think like us chatting through all of this, it I think gives a lens to more people outside of athletics, um, some of the disadvantages or some of the struggles that
Mhm.
is in the world of athletics. And you said that like there is that connotation that like athletes have it all, especially college. Like you
Oh
can't
yeah.
ignore that, right? Like
Oh yeah. We
the
have so much, but at the same time,
yeah, like I remember explaining to one of my friends who I was like complaining after class. I was like, oh my God, I'm tired. Okay, like sorry, I can't like study or whatever, I have to go sleep. And he was like, you like, what do you mean? Like you have it all, like don't complain. And I was like, oh, you want to go there? Like luckily it was a good friend that we were like, we kind of were joking about it, but I was like, no, like let me sit you down real quick,
yeah.
because this is some of the stuff that you're not like, this is what's behind the curtain, right? Like there are these coaches, these relationships, these athletes, like this pressure,
Mhm.
all of this. Like yeah, the gear looks nice
Yeah.
and the added perks are nice,
Mhm.
but there's a switch off to be had. Like you're
Oh
not
yeah.
waking up at 6 a.m. or whatever the switch
Yeah.
off is for each sport. And so
Mhm.
I love that you also brought that up too, because I'm sure, I don't know how Alabama and Rutgers, where like swimming was ranked in the tiers of like just different athletes and different sports alone, like in
Mhm.
one college. Like I
Yeah.
went to Notre Dame, so of course football's at the top, right?
Oh yeah.
Like
Oh yeah.
of course.
Same. Yeah.
Rowing, we are not at the top. And
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Swimming is.
yeah, like that's like track, swimming, and rowing, like as a sport are very similar. Like they're individual, but they're also team
yeah.
based. So, and you're just doing like there's no plays, right? Like you're doing
Right.
the same thing over and over. And so, um, that's where I can relate to you on that sense, where it's like, oh, even in different colleges within different teams there's those power plays.
Yeah.
And so I think like just sharing more about that and sharing unique experiences is very admirable.
Thanks.
Yeah, so I want to now ask you, with the coach Rick, you said his name
Mhm.
was,
Yeah.
so you had your experience at Alabama,
Mhm.
and you decide that you need
Yeah.
to transfer, you need to get out of there, it's
Yeah.
unhealthy.
Yes.
So what does that whole process look like then, going to like growing home to California and then eventually Rutgers? Can you walk us through that?
Yeah. So I went home, I entered the portal, and I basically just trained club for
Mm-hmm.
the next over a year because then COVID happened.
Right.
And being home for that time was like the best decision. Like being with Rick, being with a club team again, and just knowing that like I'm swimming for myself only, and like I'm choosing to go to
Yep.
practice each day. There wasn't like that pressure of like if you don't go to practice, your life, we're gonna ruin your life. Um, like swimming became for me again, and I slowly started to heal. There was a lot. I mean, it's still a process. Like I'm still working on it, but having that safe space and having Rick, who like I literally can talk to about anything, and
Mm-hmm.
he's like the person in my life who, I mean, I think he has helped me with my mental health and like has supported me the most out of any other person.
Shout
Um,
out to Rick.
yeah.
Sounds
Oh,
like a
he's
wonderful
a real one.
person.
He's a real one. I love him.
I'm so
He
happy you have someone like that, like a true
yeah.
leader and mentor.
Yes. Yeah. He's the best. And like I entered the portal and I got a DM from John here at Rutgers, and I talked with him, came on a trip, I committed here. And then unfortunately COVID happened. And I
Mm-hmm.
was supposed to come here fall of 21. Wait, no, fall of 2020. So it's
Mm,
fall of 2020. And John, and obviously in New Jersey, like it was very, very still shut down at that
yeah.
point. I mean, even in California, like we got kicked out of our pool. I mean, everybody knows. Everybody knows what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't end up getting here until March of 2021. I wasn't planning on coming here until the fall of 21, because I was going to just stay home and train with Rick for open water. And there was open water in April of 2021. And up until January, I was like ready to go. I was training the best I'd trained since my junior year of high school. I was really, really excited. And then I got COVID.
Mm,
And that was another, like, with the Alabama thing and the shoulder and the overtraining, like I've never been the same since I got COVID. I had really, really bad long COVID, and I still do. And unfortunately, my body will never be the same, I don't think.
mm-hmm.
So after that happened, and the whole next year, like unraveling my identity has kind of been forced for me, because I I don't want to say that I'll never be as fast, but my career is coming to an end shortly, and
Yeah.
not looking good. My health is not what it was, and thankfully, being in therapy and working on my mental health and having this not be the first time that I've been forced to step away from my sport,
Mm,
has helped. Like knowing that I went through those 9 months, and yeah, they sucked, and like knowing that I've done a better job with taking care of myself in the times that I've been out,
mm-hmm.
and in the times that I just simply cannot swim like I used to because of long COVID and because of what it did to my body. Um,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah. There's a lot of power in learning to that, even alone. Like you saying that now, at least that you like an unforeseeable positive note of your 9 months of leaving swimming is like now you're more comfortable with the idea.
yeah,
And I think coming to terms with like when your perception of what your swimming career is going to look like, and for some reason or another, a wrench gets thrown in the plan and your reality then looks different, and you have that moment of like, I don't think I'm ever going to be the same. Like,
yeah,
I also very much relate to you on that. Like of kind of knowing your athletic peak is most likely behind you and still looking at the future and being like, but I still have to compete
yeah,
and be
yeah,
on the team. It's
yeah.
such a like at the time defeating feeling.
Oh, yeah, it
And
really is.
so yeah, I um yeah, I can feel the emotion behind that. And I, for your sake, like getting long COVID and still struggling with it, I hope that you are able to like still get a best of record. But yeah,
Yeah,
there's a lot there.
yeah. It's really like COVID. I mean, it was so unexpected too. Like, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I was relatively healthy. Like, obviously, my body wasn't the same as it was when I was 17 after what that other coach did to me, but I was doing so much better, and my health was pretty steady. So I thought that I'd be fine after I got it, but I definitely tried to rush into getting back to training because I had been doing so well, and I was like, oh, I'm fine. It's fine. Like I as soon as my quarantine was over, I got back in the water, but I couldn't even make it through practice. I was like falling asleep on my kickboard. Like it was horrible. And just like shocking because obviously, like, I knew that COVID was a bad disease and I knew that people were dying from it. Obviously, you see it in the news and stuff, but like you never think like, oh, this will happen to me. Like I never once thought like, oh, my body will never be the same. Um
Yeah.
and coming to terms with that, like I almost retired at the end of last year, just due to some other like that and just like a bunch of other things that happened. But I decided to keep going for this year because even though like I know that my body will probably not be the same, I probably won't swim fast again, and I probably won't make another national team. Like coming to terms with that while still in the sport
Mm.
is like what I wanted to do. Like my
Yeah.
goal for this year is to separate myself from the sport and end my career loving it and not end it
Mm.
out of spite and not end it out of like I hate it and I hate my body and I hate myself and I hate my coaches. I want to end it on my terms and I want to end it um knowing that not that I did everything I could to be fast again because I did do everything I could to be fast again and I don't think it's going to happen just because of what happened to me. But
Right.
knowing that I didn't deserve that, I um knowing that I can still consider myself successful even if I don't end my career a success
Mm.
has been the process I've been working on
Yeah.
in therapy. And actually, it's funny because, sorry, this is a little bit of a tangent, but
No,
I'm gonna.
do it. Do it. We love tangents.
Um, last in the spring, was I was like, I'm done. Like I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I'm so sick of it. And I knew I had a very toxic relationship with the sport, and I still do.
Mm.
Every athlete does to some
Yeah.
extent. But I've always had this goal ever since I made the national team and ever since I started not performing well and had all these issues that I was like, I'm going to make the national team again. And then I'm going to write a book because I love writing. I'm a writer.
Good for
I,
you.
I write all the time. And I was like, I'm going to make the national team again and I'm going to write a book about my comeback. And
Hmm.
this is my goal. It was literally a huge reason why I wanted to make it again. Um,
Yeah.
and then as I started thinking about retiring and as I was like, processing it in the spring, I was like, you know what? I don't have to make the national team again to write a book.
Yeah.
And I started writing down my thoughts and my feelings about the sport. And I was like, you know what? I don't even think I want to make it again. I
Mm.
think that success and that pressure and all those things that came out of that happening has like been worse than had I not
Mm.
made it. Like, and like I started writing a book. It's called Triumphant Failure that I've
I
started.
love that title.
I don't know when I'm going to finish it, but it's kind of about it's about my experience as someone who got success really really fast and then all of a sudden it came crashing down and just the things that have happened to me and kind of coming to terms with the fact that like the people who we always hear the stories of the comeback and we always hear the stories of the people who like had bad things happen
Hmm.
but they rose again to the top
Yep.
and that's the stories we hear and that's the stories that we take as like inspirational and stuff and I was
Hmm.
like we don't really hear about the people who had bad things happen to them and who their success has been coming to terms with who they are as a person and realizing that like their success doesn't define them because all of the stories that are comebacks like even if it's not explicitly said we kind of get that sense of like oh they were good because they were able to overcome like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I wanted to write a book about how like I can still recognize that I have grit and I have determination and I am a success even though my career will probably not end in the way that I wanted it to be
Hmm.
and I think that if I had had that story and had that knowledge that like it's okay, I don't have to make the national team again to be someone and have an impact on others and like be okay. Like I don't need that.
Hmm.
Um and recognizing that like I don't even know if I want it. That's been really healing for me. Um
Wow.
And uh I think that like starting to write that story has helped me realize like all of the things that happened to me and I didn't deserve them and I didn't choose them. And people who judge other people or who like might look at me, I mean, it's probably just in my head, but sometimes I get embarrassed. I'm like, I'll be at meets and people will be beating me who like I know that I'm faster than and have been faster than, but I'm like, oh, it's so embarrassing, but nobody's looking. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
know nobody is, but like to the people who like might judge others for like, oh, she was so good and then she failed, or like other people, like judging other
Yeah.
people. Like, you don't know what somebody's gone through. Like, you don't know that like COVID took everything away from me. It's
Mm-hmm.
not like I chose that. And my coach, I didn't choose the abuse that I went through and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's been really healing for me to.
Well, I'm so happy to hear that it's really healing for you. And your book, Triumphant Failure, whenever you're done, I hope to read it because I'm sure um
Definitely.
you're a phenomenal writer and I would love to kind of hear. I love that message of like not like what did you say? It was like being successful without success. That
Mm-hmm.
like in itself is like a little tagline. Great job
Yeah.
there.
Thanks.
And I can tell you've done a lot of like thinking and just retroactively and forward thinking and thinking about yourself and your identity. And so I applaud you for that. And I think the realization that you don't need to go to nationals again, like my goal, the same thing for me was to make it like in the 1V boat of rowing, which is like the top boat, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
first varsity, and I never did. And it was like very, very difficult to come to grips with. And I think if
Yeah.
I hadn't, had certain things happen, or if I hadn't responded to certain life things in different ways, it could have been a different story, but it wasn't my reality. And I know it's tad frustrating, as I'm sure you feel, because I'm sure, like in your heart, if you were at your pinnacle, like you're like, I could have done it.
Oh
That's the
yeah.
thing. And
Oh yeah.
you couldn't,
Yeah.
given, the hand you were dealt or how
Mm-hmm.
you process things. And that for me, still when I think about it, I'm like, like if
Yeah.
I'm with my teammates, especially like some of them were in the 1V, I'm like, oh my God, like they're looking at me and they're like, I'm not as good of a rower, but I know that's not how they're
Yeah.
looking at me, like so that little tinge of embarrassment that
Yeah. It's
it
so
is so easy to walk yourself down that path.
oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I know it. And sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I literally just wish I could like wave a wand and snap my fingers and I'd be back
Mhm.
like training so hard and like going fast. And that just wasn't like, no matter what I willed, it was my body wasn't
Yeah.
able to go as fast as it once was.
Yeah.
And so I understand the work that takes, and I
Yeah.
commend you for it.
Thank you.
Yeah, this has been so wonderful though. You are such a wonderful person. I'm so glad that we got to like
You.
go in depth more that we didn't get to do on the panel,
Yeah, me too.
and learn more about you. Like I'm such a fan of yours
Thank
and
you.
I can't wait to like continue following your journey and see the successes that you get, even if they're not, you know, the exact athletic successes you want to see.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This has been great.